So roughly a year back, I built a small little gaming console that was capable of emulating retro video games. I was able to play anything from the Magnavox Odyssey all the way to the PlayStation 2. It was made with a small little HP Elite Desk computer that I had lying around, and inside was a Ryzen 5 processor with integrated graphics and 16 gigabytes of RAM. The most important part of this computer was that on the motherboard there was a slot for an M.2 NVMe drive, and flashing a new operating system on this drive such as Linux will make this computer boot up to be the ultimate retro arcade device. This previous build that I had included a 1TB drive which was able to house well over 10,000 retro video games. Being the enthusiast I am, I decided that this little guy is no longer suiting my needs, and I decided to retire him, for he has served me very well. I went back to the drawing board and then I developed this guy. This sleek device right here is a small mini ITX form factor lunchbox computer that can emulate anything from the original Atari all the way to Xbox 360, PS3, and even the Switch. For this project, I try to stay in the realm of a realistic price tag for any consumer. However, we will get into that a little bit later into the video, and I will show you exactly how I built this and what is inside.
Flashback.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially time for a new project, and I could not be any more excited. All of the parts that I'm going to be needing seem to have arrived, so let's finally get started on this. One of the things that was a must for this build was the compact nature and the portability. The thing I liked most about my old console that I had created was that I can just go ahead and throw it into a backpack and take it with me to my friend's place or a family party, and I didn't have to worry about this big bulky thing that I was taking with me. I made sure for this build we went with something just as portable as the last one, so I opted for this super aesthetically pleasing mini ITX case with a carrying handle. This is the K66 Light Compact ITX case sold by SG PC. It was a little bit pricey at $90, but I am also a bit picky, so I wanted something that would display very nicely in a room. For the processor, I went with a Ryzen 5 5600X that I bought off Facebook Marketplace that was used very lightly. I was able to pick this guy up for right around $75. I went with a budget-friendly 130mm CPU cooler that I got off of Amazon that was roughly 30 bucks. It is super cheap, however it will fit this case surprisingly, and I have no complaints. For the power supply, I got this small little SFX 500 watt power supply, again very budget friendly, right around $40. I don't like to skimp out on power supplies, however this guy fits the build perfectly fine, and there was really good reviews on Amazon. For the motherboard, we have a Gigabyte A520i AC ITX motherboard, and it has an M.2 NVMe slot, which is very important. Also, make sure you get a board that is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth compatible for reasons that I will show you later in this video. We have 2 sticks of Corsair Vengeance Pro SL RAM totaling 16 gigabytes, and they were only 40 bucks used. Lastly, we have a crucial NVMe drive. Now, I went with a 4TB capacity, which is extremely pricey. However, I want this to be the ultimate gaming console, and I want it to house close to about 30,000 to 40,000 games. You can just go with a 1TB drive if you would like, which would be cheaper. However, that would limit you on the ROMs that you can download as well as the themes. Now, I know you may think that this is a very pricey build. However, you do not have to take the same route that I did. I went for not only functional, but very aesthetically pleasing and something that would fit my tastes because, well, this is my project. I also went a bit overkill on some of the specs, so you don't have to totally get the exact things that I did, and you will probably be fine with your emulations if you were lacking some of these components. Now, I am also very lucky to live in the Chicagoland area, where my Facebook Marketplace is selling lots of used computer parts for a fraction of what they sell new, so that's why I was able to build this very cheaply. They also sell pre-made gaming builds on Marketplace with similar specs as this, and you can go ahead and get one for right around 250 to 300 bucks, which would work perfectly fine. However, I'm going for the custom portability aspect, so I don't want a big bulky tower that comes with the build that they're selling. Theoretically, you can make your very own similar emulation station for right around $200 to $250, which is very budget friendly and affordable. However, that's enough talk for now. Let's go ahead and get this build completely put together so that we can go ahead and flash our software onto our NVMe drive. Alright, so it looks like we are at a good point for now. We just need to do some cable management and add the GPU. For this build, we went with a 6GB GeForce RTX 260, and we picked it up for right around $140. It should run our 1080p games very nicely. I highly recommend going with an AMD card for a Batocera build. However, I will show you later in this video how we can make our NVIDIA card compatible with our build. Once we get our card installed here and get it plugged in, for our next step, we are going to be grabbing our NVMe drive, and we are also going to be needing an NVMe to USB-C housing to plug it into our computer. First thing we are going to be needing is a torrenting software. I went with BitTorrent because that's what works for me. However, you can choose whatever you like, just make sure you download the correct version for your computer. The next thing we will be needing is a flashing software. I have been using Balena Etcher for years now, and it works extremely well for what we're going to be using it for. We need to flash our game image to our drive to make it a bootable image so everything works correctly. For the game image itself, I will be going to Arcade Punks and specifically downloading a 1TB image that was conjured up by Boo Boo Man. Shout out to Boo Boo Man. I think this image was a personal project that he had made for himself. However, he decided to give it to the community, which I think is really cool. Just follow the link that I went to and scroll down until you see this download release name and click the torrent link below. From there, let it download and open up your torrent software that you have, and we are going to be adding the torrent file that we just downloaded from Arcade Punks. Also, a very important thing to mention, make sure you save the file to somewhere that has space. It is around 1TB of data, so an external hard drive would work great for this. I suggest a 2TB drive because we will also be having to extract the folder once it's done downloading. Once it starts downloading, it will take a very long time. I think it took me over 4 days to download my image, but it all depends on how many seeds there are. Once it is done downloading, we will be unzipping the files in the folder to our external hard drive so that we can receive the .image file. For example, here we have our folder. Yours will have a lot more data inside of it. This is just an example, but we will click the first file in the folder and unzip it using whatever software that we have available. You can extract the folder to your local drive. However, if you have the space, like I said, just do it to a 2TB external drive and extract it right back to where we downloaded it so that we have zero issues with storage space. Just go ahead and scroll down to your external drive and select that guy. Now, once we have everything extracted and have the .image file, we will head over to Balena Etcher and click Flash from File. This is where our image file is going to be going. I have this one for example, however, you would just select it and click Open. Next, we need to select our target, which is going to be our NVMe drive for the build that we have connected via USB-C in our NVMe housing. Lastly, we are going to click Flash and wait about 2 to 4 hours depending on the capacity of the drive that we are flashing. Batocera usually does a good job extending the partition using all of the unallocated space on the drive. However, mine was not working correctly. There is only about 1TB being used of the 4TB that are on the drive. This is what I had to do to correct the issue. Go ahead and download an Ubuntu ISO, which we are going to be spinning up in a hypervisor. I personally like to use VirtualBox, but you can use whatever you like. Once it is downloaded, we will head over to the hypervisor and click New Machine. You can name it whatever you like, just make sure you click the correct ISO image where it asks for it. For the rest of the setup, you can leave everything else default. As for the hard disk space, you can just make it the bare minimum since we are only using this machine to extend our partition on our Batocera drive. The minimum space Ubuntu needs to operate depends on if it's a desktop edition or a minimal installation, so make sure you do your research. Once we have all that squared away, right-click the new machine and click Settings. We need to make sure that our VM can see our physical hardware by allowing our NVMe drive to connect within the VM. Click New USB and add the drive that we have our Batocera image on. Once that is done, open up Ubuntu and click Apps and head over to Gparted. We should see our VM's hard disk usage as well as our Batocera drive. Click Resize Partition and go ahead and make sure it takes up the entirety of our drive since we would like to download as many ROMs as we can onto this NVMe drive. Go ahead and click Apply to that request and let it do its thing. Once it is done, you will see how the partition is now taking up the entirety of the drive. For the next step, we need to make sure that Batocera can use NVIDIA drivers for the GPU that we have in this build. You don't have to do this on the VM, however, we are already here, so why not? Scroll down to our NVMe drive labeled Batocera and click the configuration file so that we can edit it. Open it up and scroll down until you see NVIDIA driver true and uncomment that by deleting the hashtag in front of it. Click the X and it should save it up for you. Now when you go back, you will see it uncommented, so our 2060 RTX should work correctly now. AMD GPUs do not have to do this, so that's why I highly recommend just getting an AMD GPU to make it easier. Also inside this configuration file is where Batocera extends the partition upon first boot. If you are having issues of the partition not expanding correctly like I did, you can try commenting this out first and then rebooting instead of doing the whole Ubuntu Gpart technique that we just did. Once we completed these steps, our hard drive is officially ready and it is time to see how our build turned out. So this build came out better than expected at right around $650. I could have definitely got that price way down, but I think the looks and specs of this build is awesome. I have not downloaded any more games besides the ones that came on the image, and we have right around 18,000 games plus 3 terabytes of extra space, so I think the sky is the limit on this one. The main reason I wanted to make sure that this build had Wi-Fi is because the way you add games is very simple. All you need to do is access the IP address and add ROMs via drag and drop. You can do this by going through the network directory in File Explorer and typing // and the IP address of your device given via DHCP. The other cool thing is since our build has Bluetooth compatibility, I can use a third-party wireless Bluetooth controller like this 8-bit Do Pro 2. They are a mix between a Super Nintendo controller and a PS2 controller, so they are perfect for a build like this that has many ROMs, and they are one of the nicest controllers that I've ever used. Also, since we have Wi-Fi, we can browse various different themes for Batocera, so we can literally customize this build however we want. There is a ton to choose from, and some being extremely cool with custom fan art of various different consoles and characters. I highly recommend checking some of these out, and you can literally download them with a click of a button so you could pick whichever one you like the most. I am shocked with how this build can emulate these ROMs. I tested a few games only, and I was consistently getting 60 frames per second in 1080p, and many games I can even run in 2K with no screen tearing or no issues whatsoever. I am also extremely confident that this build can pretty much run whatever I throw at it with only minor tweaks within the settings. However, I think it's time to wrap this video up because I have to get over to a buddy's house because we have a Super Mario Strikers tournament to attend to. Maybe we can even throw a LAN party. Could you imagine a build like this existing in the late 1990s? Incredible.